talk is, I have some really good, by the way, some really good graphics, but you can't see them because Bishoy. I can, but the technology isn't very good in this church. It's a personal thing. All right, so the thing I want to talk about is, the topic is raising children as your path to salvation. Okay, I'll skip that. All right, so I guess let me go down to the what, why, how of what we're talking about here. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, what do we want for our kids, right? And this is not an obvious answer, right? Because we all have lots of ideals of what we want our kids to be and what we want them to do and how we want them to act and how we want to raise them, right? And so as we think more deeply about what exactly are we looking for, right? What do we want? And when we think about why we bring them to church and why we go through all of this stuff, right? I mean, there's some answers in there that really are not always the ideal answer, right? So I kind of want to focus on just the straight and narrow. Right? So we say things like, well, we don't want our kids to go on drugs. We don't want them to marry the wrong person. We want them to go to a good school. We want them to get a good job. We want them to have a good life, right? And those are all things that are fine, okay? But that has nothing to do with the church, right? And sometimes we think to ourselves, well, if I bring my kid, sorry, I'm going to do not disturb it. If I bring my kid to church and then, eventually they're going to, do well in life and be well adapted and well adjusted. And so then the church becomes sort of this means of, raising successful kids, right? And in some churches, right, that's kind of a big thing. That's my daughter, Anna. Very successful. And that becomes a big thing, right? I want my kid to be a doctor. I want my kid to drive a Mercedes. I want my kid to have a Tesla. I want my kid to be a tech guy. I want my kid to be a whatever, right? And that's nothing to do with Christianity, right? That's nothing to do with raising them in the church, right? And is that really the right motivation for bringing them here? And the why of why we bring them and why we do all these things is ultimately we want to... Oh, there we go. Look at that. See how good that thing is? Look at this. I was normal 2 kids ago. It's kind of cute. See? Told you I have cute things. Very cute. All right, so I like this quote. It says, motherhood is about raising and celebrating the child you have, not the child you thought you had. It's about understanding that he is exactly, or she, the person he is supposed to be. And that if you're lucky, he just might be the teacher who turns you into the person you are supposed to be. Right? And so this kind of perspective is very hard to wrap my head around. Okay? Because ultimately, if you think about what we're trying to do as parents, right, what are we trying to do as parents? Right? Our goal, if you think about it, I want to raise my kids. What does it mean to raise my kids? Well, when he does something that's bad, I say, no, that's bad. And he does something that's good, I say, that's good. Okay? Now, what does that mean? What's bad and good? Well, bad is something I wouldn't do. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't talk like this. I wouldn't go there. And good is something I would say, I would do, I would act in a certain way, right? So if I diagnose it a little bit further, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to make him or her into what? An image and likeness of me, right? This is what I would say. This is what I would do. This is what I would not do. I would not go. I would not say, right? So when you do something I wouldn't do, I say bad. And when you do something I would do, I say good. So my whole goal in parenting really is to make them into my image and my likeness. I want them to be little mini me's, right? We see this, right? I mean, names aside, right? No, I shouldn't. I'll stop. I was going to be shy, but I decided not to, right? So, in my own life, right, when I see, certain situations happen, right, and one of my kids, this has happened, right, where someone says something, and one of my kids, and I think something, and I think, and I think of a response, or what I would say to that. My kid says the exact same thing. It's a beautiful moment, right? And you're like, nailed it, right? Because as a parent, right, our kids come out image, right? They're born, and we're really excited, right? He has my eyes, he has my nose, he has your ears, she has my feet, whatever, right? And we're happy that the kids are in our image, and then in life, we try to make them in our likeness. I want them not just to look like me, I want them to talk like me, think like me, I want them to react like me, I want them to be like me. And when the kid's 20 and something happens and you think of a story and then the kid says, oh, let me tell you a story, and he says the exact story you were about to tell, or tell a joke, or responds in the same way, you feel like, wow, I nailed it. I nailed it as a parent, right? I made them into my image and my likeness. Now, we have to realize, right, that there's a bit of ego there. As this quote says, motherhood isn't about is about celebrating the child you have, not necessarily the one you want. Right? And those two could be different. And you find really banging against a child, not physically, hopefully, right? But figuratively, metaphorically, just constantly clashing with a child because they're not doing what you would. Don't say it like that. Don't act like that. And you're constantly, clashing, right? And could be ego, right? Very much so, right? Because they're embarrassing me. They're not acting. They're not respecting the way they should. People are going to say, that's my child. What are they going to say about me when my kid acts like this? Right? These are all thoughts we've had. And these are all thoughts our parents told us. Which is one of the worst phrases ever in the history of phrases. Right? We should never think like that, because that will destroy you as a parent. Destroy you as a parent when you are thinking about what other people think. There is no worse motivation than what do other people think about my kid. Right? Because when you do that, now fear-based optimization problem, right? You have a fear-based algorithm that you're going through, like, what are people going to say, what are people going to think? And once I devolve down to people, what the people are going to think, right now I'm managing to the masses. I'm managing to what someone could possibly say about my kid. So now I'm acting out of fear, and I'm irrational, and I overreact, right? Because there's this additional motivation. I'm not thinking about my child going to heaven. I'm like, he's going to embarrass me. She's going to embarrass me. People are going to talk about us, our family name, our family reputation. I talked to a girl last month, and she's in the worst marriage ever. Ever. And the reason she got into this marriage is her sister broke off her engagement. And the family looked bad, right? Because everybody was saying, the people were saying that the family is, these two girls are messed up, lazy, they're crazy, right? So this girl decided, I didn't want to break off my marriage, although she was dating this guy who cheated on her, who's a disaster. And she said, I won't break it off because I don't want people to talk bad about our family. So I'm going to marry him, right? And now 6 months into it, it's pretty much done, right? Worst decision of her life. Why? Because she made a decision based on what are people going to think. Don't ever use that as a basis for anything. And so when we start thinking about what kid do I have to think about the kid that I have, not the kid I want him to be. And just embrace who it is, right? One of the neat things about Pope Kyrillos was when you look at Pope Kyrillos' disciples, right? All of them. None of them are like him. And it's actually beautiful. Same with Jesus' disciples, right? They're all very different. And each one maintained his own character. Jesus didn't try to superimpose himself on them. And Pope Kyrillos, when he raised disciples, he didn't say, do what I do. He wanted each one to be their own person. So Pope Shenouda was a scholar, Abuna Metta was super spiritual, and Athanasius was this. Everyone had their own personality, and he fostered their personality, right? So when he approached children, he didn't come at it from this, I have to make them look like me and talk like me. He let them be themselves. All right, so we talked a little bit about this. Why do we want our kids here? If it's drugs and success, and we don't want them to, do bad in school, and we want them to get a good job, and that's not the church. That's not what the church is about at all. And ultimately, we want to see them in heaven, so I can continue my relationship with my child. I want my kid to go to heaven. That's all I care about, right? Anything else, the world shall pass away and the lust thereof. Right? Anything else is temporary. Anything else is vanity of vanities. Everything else doesn't matter. Nothing matters. right? I have one objective, right? And I don't want to just see him in heaven because hell's a bad place. I want him to have a relationship with Christ, right? I want the church to be a place of a relationship, not a place of flexing and, you know, is my kid a good deacon, and my kid says the things and gets the mic, and my kid learned all of the hymns, so he won in the hymn class and became the lead guy with the mic, and, you know, and all the other parents like, wow, your kid holds the mic, right? These are all silly, horrible objectives that we have in the church that are not Christian, unfortunately, right? So that's not the point. The point is I want him to have a relationship with Christ, and I want Christ to teach him. I want Christ to lead him, because he's not my kid, right? And in my own even with my own kids, you know, and I hope my kids can attest to this, right? That I have a very standoffish, like, this is between you and God, right? This is not, you're my kid, kinda. You know, I just have to keep you alive for 18 years, and then the law says I don't have to do jack after that, right? So my job, just keeping them alive, right? And that's it. And then God teaches them the rest. I don't have to mold them and make them perfect and crush them when they're not acting spiritual. They'll learn. They'll get it. They'll find their path. If not 30, if not 40, if not 50, if not 60, they'll find it. I'm not worried, right? Everyone finds God at the end, right? So a lot of times we try to optimize and we try to focus on having the perfect 16-year-old, right? We want our kid to be perfect at 16, lead deacon, lead whatever, right? You know, and when we do that, it's not a good strategy, right? You know, I was talking to one guy, and he had his son going to all the hymn classes, and he's like, I want him to practice, and I want him to learn, I want him to lead. You know, he's like 10 years old, and I want him to be, you know, the head, and I want him, blah, 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 right? I said, look, the strategy you're employing is really good if you want this kid to peak at 17, right? If you want him to peak at 17, you're on the right path. He's going to peak at 17. If you want him to peak at 40, that's a different path. Right? Because in the parable of the sower, something very important Jesus said. He said, you know, he threw out all the seeds. He said the ones that fell on stone did what? Sprouted faster because they had no root. Right? The ones on stone came up faster because they had no root. So they grew faster than the good earth. So now you're looking at the ones on the stone, there they are, they're popping up. And then as soon as the sun came and the trials of the world came, they got burned. Right? So what you want is you want deep. You want to go deep with your children, right? You don't want them to sprout up at 17 and be the lead. No 17-year-old has a spiritual life, right? They're kids, right? That takes a long time to foster. Plant the deep seeds. Go for the depth, right? Go for the life, the personal relationship with Christ. Let Christ teach your child, and you can stand back and watch. So how do we do this? That's the rest of the talk. My objective is not get invited back. So the point of this talk, oh good, yeah, that guy downstairs is going to kill me. I talked with the deacons earlier. It went well.
To some extent, right?
Once I put up the mosque, I think that's when it all went downhill. I said, here's your problem. See this mosque? That's where you belong. That's the problem. I say these things, Yamira, it's a problem. I say them out loud. Most people think them inside. Right, so the point of the talk, it's not the kids, it's you. Right? This isn't their fault, it's your fault. Right? So now we're going to talk about how this is all your fault. Right? And if you guys are upset enough, nobody invites me back, I win. Right, so first let's step back. Why does God include us in the process of creation? Why does God let us have kids? To begin with, the love we have for our children is flawed, no doubt. But in it, we see how much God must love us. Right? So one of the best parts for me of having kids is when you have a kid. Right? I you know, just to be frank, I didn't like kids before I had kids. Right? Just put it out there. Okay? Not a big kid fan. Still not. Right? But once I had kids, it was like night and day, right? And then you look at this child and you love this thing more than anything on earth, right? And you're all parents, you all know that if anything attacked your child, you would throw yourself in front of your child without skipping a beat, right? Any parent would die for their kid in a second, right? Something our kids don't understand about us, but we know this about ourselves, right? I would even for you, Gregory, right? So what hit me, right, is I was loving this thing, and I remember having this thought, is it possible that God loves me this much? I didn't actually think it's possible. Like, there's no way God loves me as much as I love this kid. And then you're like, wow, that's a lot of love. And then you start to get God, right? You get a glimpse. When you have a child, you're like, oh, this is why he says, call me dad. This is how much God loves me, right? And so can God reveal himself to us through us being a parent? So the point of being a parent is I get to understand who God is, right? And when he created us and we create, he says, I want you to be like me. I want you to create, and I want you to get how much I love you, right? And that's the point of having kids, is to understand God, right? And get a glimpse into that. And so now comes the next, him to our children, because he revealed himself to us through the children, and now I reveal him to the kids through me. And that's the point. One time a young dad asked me, he said, do you have any advice for, a young dad, he has 3 little kids? And I said, my advice would be, think about the dad in the story of the prodigal son, and think, whenever you face a situation you don't know what to do, say, what would he do? What would the father in the parable of the prodigal son do? Be that guy. Be that loving. Be that forgiving. Be that understanding. That's a high bar, right? Because, sometimes we think, oh, well, I'm just going to leave my kids. I'm just going to let him go and do whatever. Yeah. Sometimes that's what it means to be a parent, right? And sometimes we think that the parents who just let their kids go, oh, they're the bad parents. I'm the good parent. I'm controlling my kid. Well, it turns out it's easier to control than to let go. Right? As some of the nods in the room, as we start to get teenagers, we realize what that means, right? Letting go is really, really hard. Okay? Really hard. It's much easier to control. And what God teaches us is that's actually not the objective, right? So the father in the story of the prodigal son, he was able to say, do whatever you want, and give them that free will. So ultimately, he's this reflection of God. And I have to be this reflection of God to my kids. My kids will learn about who God is from me. I am God to a little child, right? I am Jesus to a little child. They look at you and they're modeling everything after you. I'll tell you a story that happened to me yesterday. We were getting on a bus in Victoria, and one of the parents, so the bus, it's kind of a rip-off, but the little bus charge you $15 to take you to Victoria, right off the cruise dock. And so one of the parents, there's several families there. In fact, I still have my little thing. I got stamped because I paid my $15, and then he took his hand and he rubbed it on my hand and he took the stamp off, right? So when the guy came, he said, look, I've already been stamped. And the guy goes, oh, okay, you've already been stamped. And then he said, okay, and can you stamp my kids as well? So he stamped all the kids, right? So now, and his wife. So he saved $60, right? 15 times. And so I looked at the kids right in front of the dad, and I said, what do you think what your dad just did? Right? Is it okay to lie? Right? And they're like, and their response was, well, I mean, we save money. They were taught. Their God says, if you save money, it's okay to lie. That's the God the dad taught them to be. That's their God. Right? And in fact, we have this concept in Egypt, right? It's okay to cheat and lie as long as, you don't want to be stupid, right? I mean, right? I'm not gonna pay all my taxes. I'm not an idiot. I'm gonna lie. It's okay because you're saving money. As long as you're saving money, that's okay. So now I'm teaching them who God is. God says it's okay to lie when you're saving money, if you're going to make money. Right? And so our actions, we have to be very thoughtful about what our actions tell our kids about who God is. What does this icon mean? Yes, Salam, George. Get no love. I want you to stare at the icon. At the very top of Jesus, it says, "Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens..." No. I just stare at it first. So the one in front of Jesus was, "Here I am," from the book of Revelation. "Here I am standing at the door and knocking. If anyone wants me to come in and have supper with them, open the door." And notice there's no... Oh, sorry. And notice there's no knob on the door. Right? So Jesus can't open the door. It has to be opened from the inside. And then who's the other guy? The other guy's me. And what's the other guy doing? Sad. Why? He's ashamed. He can't open the door. It turns out this is the primary problem with youth today. Christ wants to come in, and I'm too ashamed to open the door. I don't want to let him in. I don't want the light to show my darkness. I feel that bad about myself. Shame paralyzes the kids. They mess up, they do something they shouldn't do, whatever. And now, I'm bad. I'm not one of the good kids. We've had a lot of lessons on these things, and I know what my Sunday school teacher thinks of me now. I know what everyone in the church thinks of me now. I'm not a good kid. I'm not a good person. I'm defiled. I'm whatever. And I don't want to let him in. And this is a bigger problem in our church than any other problem. The youth have no hope. The youth have no hope. We have presented to the youth a view of righteousness, a fake view of righteousness and holiness and what it means to be a good Christian. And we say, this is it. This is the real deal. And they look at it and they go, I can't do that. And then they just give up. Right? And that's what we see a lot. I'll read to you what it says. Over the person crying, it says, "You cannot escape shame except by shame. The demons persuade us not to confess. Lay bare open your wounds to the physician." So the key is, this person is hiding from God, hiding from the light, hiding from the view of people, hiding from the clergy, hiding from the servants. This is where you don't want your kids to go. You don't ever want them to go here. This is the most dangerous place. This is the place of depression, anxiety, loneliness, feeling isolated, unable to talk to anyone. You don't want them going here. This is the bad place. And not just because of its depression and anxiety and all this stuff, but because I don't even want to let Christ in. And once I say no, I don't want to let Christ in because of my shame and my own toxic hatred of myself, everything falls apart. And this is the outcome we need to avoid as parents. So Elder Porforio says, "Let us stretch out to him and approach him as a friend. Do we fall? Do we sin? With familiarity, love, and trust, let us run to him. Not with fear that he will punish us, but with the confidence which we deserve from the sense of being with a friend." We want to foster that relationship, right? That's the Christ in the church. That Christ has to be seen first and foremost in us, in our behavior, in the way we approach the kids. They will learn about who Jesus is from the way we approach them. Even little things like, when a plate falls and you say, "What did you do?" That's the wrong thing to say. Because the kids are going to start to say what? "Nothing." Well, now he's lying, right? Because he dropped the plate. But he knows you're going to get pissed at him, so he says nothing. So now he's lying. He knows that's the right answer. And you've taught him fear. You've taught him reprisal. You've taught him judgment. So we have to be careful that in every motion we model this Christ, the one who can accept anyone. No matter what the kid says, they can always come to us. They can always come to Christ. And if you can't come to me, no problem, Habibi, you go to Jesus. His arms are always open. He's always there. Right? And that's that relationship that we have to foster. Focus on the relationship. So how do we handle the things that our kids are seeing in school? So you guys all know it's Pride Month and everyone's losing their mind. First thing, listen calmly. Right? If when you come in, you say, you know, my teacher says that boys can marry boys, and they showed me a thing that we stick up, you know, their anus, and that's how they have sex, and blah, 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 right? And you lose your mind, which I get. Right? And you're like, what? That's wrong? Leviticus? Sodom and Gomorrah? Ah! Neck bulges, veins, right? Is your kid going to come to you again? I mean, how many of us don't tell our parents things because they're nuts, right? We know that if I tell my parents, they're just going to lose their mind. So I just don't tell mama, right? How many families have chats that exclude the parents because they know the parents can't handle it? The parents can't handle it, right? So if our reaction is one of anger, right, then the kids aren't going to come to us. They're not going to open the door, right? The kid has to know no matter what they've done, that they're always going to come to you, and you will not get angry. You will stay calm, no matter what. Because believe me, when they drop a plate or they get spaghetti on their shirt, who cares? Forget the shirt. Throw it away. Don't burn the relationship because they ruined a shirt. Go to Costco, get another one. Forget the shirt, right? Don't ruin the relationship. Let them know, oh, you dropped on yourself? Okay, well, let's get you another shirt. Done. No problem. Put it in the washing machine. Right? But when I lose my stuff, right, the kid knows. I'm not going to tell mom that. Got to hide it. Got to keep it. You know, let me go wash it myself. Let me go do this. Let me manage them. Validate their feelings when they come to us saying anything. First thing you say is, you don't start with, that's wrong. Wrong answer. You have to constantly let them know, yeah, I see what you're saying. I get that. I felt the same way. Right? And then work from that position. Because that's how Jesus did it. Right? He walked in and he went right to wherever you were. You're a harlot, no problem. You're a tax collector, no problem. You're a crazy fisherman named Peter, no problem. Right? I'll work with you. Wherever you're at, we'll work together. St. John Chrysostom says, no matter how just your words may be, you ruin everything when you speak with anger. This applies to parenting big time. And I wish I could say I'm perfect here and I never get angry. I mean, I get angry in church, so, you know, clearly I get angry with my kids. But that's such a true statement, right? Let them see your demeanor, let them see your calmness, let them see your love, let them see your patience, and let them learn about who God is from you. That when they approach God, God's going to have that same demeanor, that same calmness, that same patience. Point out the positives. Help them see it from the point of view of a loving God. I'll tell you about Saint Silouan. He's this really amazing saint. He was on Mount Athos, I think maybe 100 years ago or so. He tells a story about when he was little. And he says that he was supposed to, there's like 7 kids, they worked in the farms, and each one had to take a turn preparing dinner. And it was Saint Silouan's turn to prepare dinner, so he came in early, and he went to go cook dinner. And it was a Wednesday. And so he prepared a non-fasting meal, meat, whatever, right? He forgot it was Wednesday. And so he made the meal non-fasting. So his dad came in, and he tells a story, you know, as a saint now. And he says, my dad came in, and he ate the meal, and he didn't say a word. And they're very rigid, not rigid, a very, you know, strict spiritual family, right? They always fasted Wednesdays and Fridays. And he said, my dad waited 6 months to tell me. He said, do you remember when you prepared dinner 6 months ago on a Wednesday? You prepared it with non-fasting food. And Saint Silouan is just so overwhelmed by his dad in this moment. He's like, look how patient my dad was. He didn't overreact. He didn't scream and yell at me. He didn't say, what are you doing? You know, you should know better. Shame, cancel, attack. He said he waited for 6 months to bring it up lovingly and kindly. Right? God is that patient with us. And St. Siloam's father was teaching him, this is how long suffering God can be. He doesn't have to react now, or this month, or this year. He can wait. He can address it later. He can remind you of something that happened when you were a child. Right? This is who God is. Right? Again, we model this through our own patience. Oh, okay, this is the story. Skip that. So let's talk about teenagers, since that seems to be the age. So after a decade or so of struggle and effort, and we make sacrifices for our kids, right? You've all made tons of sacrifices. You pour out your love without any hesitation, right? Think of all the things you've given up for your kids, all the sacrifices you've made, all the time you've invested, all the work, all the sleepless nights, how tired you both were, and yet you went out of your way to go make a party for them or do something for them, and you just gave yourself. And many of us, we compromise even our marriages, our relationships. We don't do date night anymore. We don't go to the movies. We're too focused on the kids, right? So even our relationship with our spouse becomes compromised, and we sacrifice that for the sake of the kids, right? And this is what we do as parents. We give until there's really nothing left to give. And then your teen looks at you after years of sacrifice and love, and they say, I will not reciprocate your love. Isn't that what teenagers do? They say, I hate you, you're ruining my life. And then you're like, Anna never said that, by the way. And a teenager will say, to their dad, you're ruining my life. And the dad just got to look back at you and go, I'm ruining your life. You ruined my life. But that's what teenagers do, right? So after you give and give and give and give and give and give, and you think you're being so sacrificial, what happens when the teenager pushes back and says, I don't even like you. You're nothing to me. You're not even that smart. My kids say I'm not smart all the time. And our first reaction is anger, maybe sadness, guilt. Maybe I raised them wrong. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Blah, blah, blah. And then the second reaction I have is, isn't this what I did to God all the time? Isn't God the one who gave me so much, even his life? And how do I reciprocate it? So ultimately, in that instance, I become Christ-like. In that instance, I start to reflect God's love to them. So now when my kid looks at me and says, I'm not interested in anything you have to say, you're just an idiot, you don't know anything, how do I react? Do I react the way Christ reacted? Do I react the way the Father reacted in the story of the prodigal son? That's the story of the prodigal son. When the kid comes back, do I say, let's kill the fatted calf, put a ring on his finger? My son was dead and now is alive. Right? Or do I react with anger? All right, so this is from Elder Porphyrios. He says, what saves and makes for good children is the life of the parents in the home. This is a very daunting thing. Now, by the way, I'm not a big fan of guilt at all. I don't think Christ used guilt. I don't think the church should use guilt. I don't think that's an approach we should be taking ever. In this book, Elder Porphyrios uses a better expression. He calls it wounded by love. Right? When someone is wounded by love, what's ultimately happening is someone's love is so penetrating that you're just like, I can't believe you love me this much. I'll do anything. Right? Think of the story of the adulterous woman, right? When Christ saved her life, and then he didn't judge her, and then he made the people throwing rocks go away, and then when she felt guilty, he says, no one's judging you. Right? That's wounded by love. She's looking at him like, I'll do anything for this guy. Right? So that should always be the approach we take as parents. Because it's easy as parents, and this happened to us as growing up, I'm sure, as it did to all of you, which is, after everything I've done for you, you're going to act like this. After all the money I've spent on you, you're going to do this to me. After everything I bought you, after all the sacrifice I made for you, you're going to treat me like this. That's what parents say. Right? And if that's your approach as a parent, then don't be a parent. right? If your approach is a quid pro quo, if your approach is, I'm going to do for you, now you're going to do for me, I raised you, now you're going to help me, that's not why we have kids. We don't have kids because they're going to do stuff for us. Our love is one directional. Just like God's love is one directional. Right? In the Gregorian liturgy, don't we say, you are not in need of our service, but we are in need of your lordship? He doesn't need our service. It's one directional. Right? So the parents need to devote themselves to the love of God. They need to become saints in their relation to their children through their mildness, patience, and love. You see how mildness, patience, lack of anger is being repeated over and over and over again? Because that's who Jesus is. They need to make a new start every day with a fresh look, renewed enthusiasm, and love for their children. And the joy that will come to them, the holiness that will visit them, will shower grace on their children. All right, so now comes the direction. I do, right? I focus on my spiritual life, and then it flows downhill. And that's the only way spiritual life works. I can't make the kids be something else. And by the way, this works in both directions. Right? So a lot of times you'll see parents do this thing where they'll drop their kids off at hymn meetings or whatever meeting, okay? And then there's a meeting for the parents, but they don't go to that, right? They're not stupid, right? They go to Starbucks, okay? Now the kids also, by the way, aren't stupid, right? And so the kids know the parents went to Starbucks. They have to wait for their parents to show up from Starbucks with their cups. They're like, hey, Mom, wasn't there a meeting for you? Didn't Abuna do a Bible study, or didn't someone do a Bible study for you? Wasn't there a meeting here? Yeah, but I'm older. See, God is for little kids, not for adults. Well, guess what? When I become an adult, Mom, I'm going to be just like you. I'm also going to go to Starbucks. I'm also going to miss the meetings. Right? So we can't fake it. You can't fake it. Right? You can't tell your kid, be good, and I'm not going to be good. Right? Abuna Duud Lemai has this great expression. I'll say it in Arabic and I'll translate. He says, "It-tarbiyah b'tshirib." Right? Raising of kids is absorbed. It's drunk. Right? Kids just absorb you. They become like you. And so you can't fake it. You can't like go off and go to the bar and go to the Starbucks and go to whatever and blow off the church and then tell your kid, you go to church. Doesn't work. Maybe when they're 15, yeah, they'll go for a while, but then they'll give up and they'll be like you. And it can't work the other way around either. If you're a good person, your kid's going to be a good person. You almost can't help it. Right? I mean, you can tell your kid, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to go serve the homeless. But if you want to go out and get drunk, go ahead. Your kid will be like, you know what, I want to go with you, Dad, to go serve the homeless. Right? And you can say, look, you do whatever you want. I'm going to stay up late and help a friend who's in need right now. I'm going to go to their house at 2 o'clock in the morning and help them out. Your kid's going to do that when they're older. You can't turn it off. Right? You can tell me, yeah, son, you go to the bar, I'm going to go help people. Dad, I want to go help people with you. Maybe not this year, but definitely next year. Right? So either way, you can't fake it. Can't make them good when you don't care, and you can't make them bad if you do care. They're just going to be like you. Right? We all know this, right? We've all said things like our parents. We're like, God, I thought I'd never be like them. And here I am just like them. Most of us turn out just like our parents. So the way you have holy kids, be holy. It's all on you. Can't force it. Can't say, I'm gonna come to church, but I'm not into it. They're gonna tell. They can spot it. Generally, the parents, this is harsh. This is why I'll not get invited back. Generally, the parents are to blame for the bad behavior of the children. That's harsh. I mean, not my kids, but everyone else's kids. And their behavior is not improved by reprimands, disciplining, or strictness. If the parents do not pursue a life of holiness and if they don't engage in spiritual struggle, they will make great mistakes and transmit the faults they have within them. So our own insecurities, our own weaknesses, our own, what are people going to say, our own fears, our own anxiety, we just transmit that to our kids. If you want kids without anxiety and fear and all the things, don't have them. Work on them. Focus on our own spiritual lives. Be better. Right? And the more you can do, the more you'll transmit to your kids. I like this part. And their behavior is not improved by reprimands, disciplining, or strictness. Sometimes you watch a kid who's been beat down his whole life, and the parents just think, I just need to beat him down a bit more. That's going to fix this. Not even physically, right? Just like emotionally, just biting comments, constantly cutting them down until they get better. Right? When you think about that, it's kind of crazy, right? I mean, you imagine, someone's, this icon here, right? Imagine it's half painted, okay? And I see that it's half painted. Maybe the artist hasn't finished it. He's only halfway through it, okay? So I walk over to this half painted icon and I said, this doesn't look like a real icon. It's not good. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to take a hammer and I'm going to hit it. And I'll keep hitting the icon until it looks like a real icon, until they're the image and likeness of God. Make any sense? No. But that's what we do. We take a kid, half cooked, and we say, hit him. Every time they do something bad, hit him. Break him down. Let him know that's wrong. Is that going to bring it to life? No. Right? The real artist touches. I'll tell you a story. During COVID, I took an icon workshop class. I can't draw with beans, but I took the class. And so everybody had to submit a picture of an icon, okay? And then the iconographer, he's a guy in Australia, Ashraf, he's really good. He would take the icon, and then this is on Zoom, right? So he brought everybody's icon, and they're horrible, right? These things are just like god-awful, right? I'm like, what are you people doing? You suck. Okay, so I didn't say that, but okay, so there's sucky icons here, right? And you submit your sucky icon. And then he takes his pencil, he goes, okay, I see what you're doing here. This is a good start. He said the same thing every time. This is a good start. And then with his pencil, he just kind of, I said, okay, so if you just rounded the face here a little bit, and maybe just develop these eyes just a little bit more, and then you just kind of push this out, look at the chin, maybe tighten the chin just a little, and next thing you know, thing's beautiful, right? He just touched it. He went with it. It was there, it was lousy, and he just fixed the parts, right? And he just added, right? That's the right approach. If he just took a marker and went, no, and just marked over it, we get nowhere, right? So in our kids, we want to bring them out to this image and likeness. That's how we have to approach them, very gently, wherever they are, and we just touch, right? And say, that's this part here. Maybe we could say it like this, right? Give them positive feedback. Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with the actions and truth. All right. Okay, so this is good. A large part of the responsibility for a person's spiritual state lies with the family. For children to be released from their various inner problems, it is not enough for them to receive good advice or to be compelled by force, nor do logical arguments or threats do any good. We do a lot of threatening. These things rather make things worse, matters worse. The solution is to be found through the sanctification of the parents. Become saints and you will have no problems with your children. The sanctity of their parents releases the children from their problems. Now I know this sounds theoretical, but it isn't. And the reason it's not is because this is, again, not about peaking at 16. No one cares when your kid peaks. They don't have to peak at 16. They can peak at 50. That's okay too, right? So we want to plant those deep seeds, right? The ones that take a decade or two to grow, right? The sanctity of the parents, that's one of them. You live that righteous life and your kid can't help it. They go in that direction. And there's nothing else they even know. Okay, I like this one. Pray, and when you have to, speak. Pray, and when you have to, speak. This is good. We can all use this one. When you have to, speak to your children with love. Lots of prayer and few words. Less is more. Less is more. We mustn't become an annoyance, but rather pray secretly and then speak, and God will let us know in our hearts whether the others have accepted what we have said. If not, we won't speak. We will simply pray mystically. Because if we speak, we become an annoyance and make others react or even infuriate them. This is why it is better to speak mystically to the heart of others through secret prayer rather than to their ears. This is really important. And the question here is, do you really believe this? That's a question. Do you really believe in the stuff we're saying or not? Do you really believe in prayer? Do you? Do you think this works? And that's a function of our own faith, our own limitations, our own weakness. And that's something we have to grapple with, right? Is it okay? But the kid won't know. I mean, if I don't say anything, the kid won't learn. The kid won't understand. I have to teach them. I have to. Do you? Or can you just be? Can you be a light? Can you be love? The kid will figure it out. The kid will start to speak. The kid will start to love. The kid will start to understand. Right? Maybe not right away. It takes a while. Not at 16, but by 40. Same for 40 people. All right, so I'll tell you the story, and then I think I'll end. Well, I don't know. No, I won't tell you the story. Okay, so I'll tell you the story. So, too late. Yeah, I know. I realized that after I said it. So one time we were it was Thanksgiving, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago or so, and we were at my wife's sister's house, and we were playing Risk. You guys ever play Risk? Okay. And so Gregory was playing Justin. I shouldn't name names. I shouldn't have said anything. Never mind. I kind of have to. I should stop. I don't think I can. No, I'll stop. I'll start. I'll finish it. So someone in my family, right? So they were playing Risk, and then someone cheated, okay? And what basically happened is one of the kids beat the other kid. And so the other kid cheated and said, you know what, no, you're supposed to roll that dice first and then that one. And we'd been playing the other way for like the last 6 weeks, right? So, you know what, you're changing the rules right in the middle. And I just looked at him, I go, that's not how we've been playing. That doesn't matter, right? Because it's like you roll, then he rolls. And it doesn't matter if he rolls, then you roll, or you roll and he rolls. It's the same, right? And he's like, no, that's it. This is breaking the rules. I'm not playing, da-da-da. And I got really upset. I was super angry. I'm like, because I'd never seen them cheat like that. And it upset me. And I was so pissed off, right? And I just went into the room, and I said, Lord, you teach them. I obviously failed. I obviously botched this. And I went back in, I go, let's keep playing. Right? And then the son who had cheated, and this is hard to do for those of you who do statistics, he rolled 7 ones in a row, which is almost kind of impossible. And the other one who hadn't cheated rolled 7 sixes in a row. Right? And just defeat crushed, basically. And I was like, wow, that really worked. Right? Learned the lesson. And then I talked to him afterwards, and I said, what did you learn from that? He goes, yeah, cheaters never win. And I go, oh. And so for me, it was this moment, right, where I allowed God. Because it's very easy to give people advice like, you know, you should let God help you, right? When someone else's kid has problems, everyone tells you the same thing, right? God, you should pray. God will fix it for you. Well, that's easy for you to say because it's not your kid. It's not your kid on drugs. It's not your kid in jail. It's not your kid who's got this problem. It's my kid, right? So it's easy to give advice when it's not your kid. Everyone can talk about God when it's not theirs, right? And it's not appreciated, by the way. It's not a good idea. Don't do that, right? What's much harder is when it's mine and it's real, right? And letting go at that moment is very difficult to do. But that's what we have to learn how to do, right? Let God take these things. Should we stop and do Q&A? I don't know. I'll just leave that picture up for a second. I got like 40 more slides or something like that. Yeah, the sushi's here 10 minutes ago, so yeah. Yes, tfadda. Oh, thank you. Rabbina khalik lay. But you also came late. These people have been here for the whole time. They're dying. These people are like, my God. All right, we'll continue. I want to talk about this idea of sin. This guy, Father Stephen Freeman, I love him, by the way. You should look up his quotes. He has this great article that says, you are not your sin. You are not your sin. And sometimes we identify ourselves as our sin. I'm just a whatever. And it's toxic. He says, we could also experience at a toxic level shame that is self-inflicted. Any number of sinful actions can yield that result. And it is here that I want to intervene in this article and drive home a point. We are not our sin. Don't ever call your kid the sin that they are, right? Or the sin that they're doing. Say, oh, well, that's because you're a liar, right? That's because you're a bigot. That's because you're stupid, right? Don't ever label your kid a sin, because that's not what they are, right? In fact, if your kid says, I'm just stupid, I'm a liar, no, you're not. You're my son, and you're the Son of God. And don't ever forget those two things, right? And that's the place we are as Christians, right? We're in that middle ground, right? Are we saints or are we sinners? We're both, right? Am I the temple of the Holy Spirit, or am I just dust? I'm both, right? And I'm very keenly aware that I am just dust and that God made me the temple of the Holy Spirit, right? And so if you tell me, am I a queen or am I a harlot? I'm both, right? And so don't ever tell me, if once I start thinking I'm a queen, someone may say, no, you used to be a harlot. And if you think to yourself, I'm just a harlot, she says, no, you're my queen, right? That's where we live as Christians, right in that middle place. I am because God made me, right? So never let your kids devolve into labeling themselves as anything but the Son of God and your son or daughter. No human being is evil by nature. We are created good, fundamentally good, even very good in the language of Genesis. And though we may do many things, and many things may be done to us, none of them change who we are. Sin is not a constitutive part of our existence. It is extra-human and external to our nature. So we are not that. We are always this gold. We are always this image and likeness of God. Maybe tarnished. All of us are tarnished. The mirror never reflects properly. Fine. But don't ever forget who you are. And don't ever let your kids forget who they are. And this is the result of toxic sin. That's Judas. Right? That's when we lose hope. And going back to what I said in the very beginning of the talk, hope is the one thing that our kids don't have these days. They feel hopeless. They feel like I can never be all of these things. And we also have a cultural thing that I want to talk about. For some reason in our culture, we're supposed to pretend we're good. We're supposed to pretend like, did you pick up the sushi? Okay. We're supposed to pretend like I don't want to be a stumbling block, so I have to act righteous. I don't want people to know that I mess up. I don't want people to know I'm a sinner. I don't want people to know. And I'm supposed to hide my sins, which actually is very inconsistent, right? In the Epistle of James, it says, confess your sins to one another. And we see this in the early church, that confession was public, wasn't it? Now, why would you have public confession? Why does that make any sense? It actually makes a lot of sense, right? Every AA meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous, every 12-step program, what is it? People sit in a circle, public confession. It's very therapeutic. It's wonderful. And it'd be wonderful if in our church community we could sit in a circle and talk about our sins and say, this is why I'm broken. And I'll tell you why we can't. Because we have this idea of righteousness that isn't correct. Right? And then this judgment comes in. But if we all really thought of ourselves as sinners, then we'd absolutely have this culture. Right? We'd absolutely open up to each other and say, oh, wow, that's what you're going through? Let me tell you what I'm going through. Maybe not what you're going through, but it's equally bad. And that's the beauty of this idea of opening up our sins and hiding our talents, hiding our glory. And unfortunately, in our culture now, it's the opposite. We come to church to do what? Showcase our talents. In fact, some people will even say the church is a place where we show our abilities. We show our talents of the kids, and we highlight everything they can do. Really? Where does it say that? Like in the Bible or in the Fathers or anywhere, actually. That I come to church to showcase my talents. That's like standard fare now. Well, I come to church and I expose myself to the judge, to the doctor. I tell him what's wrong. And I expose myself to everybody else. And as a community, we come together in love. That community is what our kids need. So our kids need to feel like everyone in the church loves them as much as their parents do. Our community needs, our kids need to feel like I can go to anyone in this church. And maybe not everyone, few people. Right? Growing up, you can all think of a few people in your church that you felt comfortable going to. Like if I have a problem, I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to talk to him. He's not going to judge me. Right? And I can't tell you how many kids have come up to me and just said the exact same thing. And I'm not boasting. I really don't care. I know you wouldn't judge me. That's why I told you. That's the only reason I told you. Even though I'm wearing a black dress. Right? And that needs to be part of our community. That the kids can come up to us and go, I can't tell my mom, but I can tell you. Right? I have other people, other adults in my life, because if I don't tell another adult who has a head on their shoulders, I'm going to tell a 14-year-old, and heaven help us all. Because the 14-year-old's advice isn't optimal. Right? Isn't ideal. B. Okay, so I'll get to that. How do you shift cultures? Hi, guys. The only answer is you have to be that thing. That's all you can do. If we wait for others to get better, the church to change. Look, I'll tell you guys a story. This girl was telling me that she went on a retreat. This is a long story, but we'll get there. She went on a retreat, a girls' retreat, in the 8th grade or something. And the servant said to her, you know, when you're in your menstrual cycle, you're not allowed to touch the Bible. Nor are you allowed to read the words of the Bible because you're defiled. Of course, this is idiotic, right? Islamic horrendous garbage, okay? And so now here's the problem. This girl heard this stuff, okay? What is she going to do? Well, if she has any brains, she'll leave the church. If she thinks at all, she'll like, that's stupid. This is stupid. See ya, right? That's what she should do, the smart ones. And then that's what they do. The smart ones go, that's idiotic, I'm out of here. And then we go, oh, look how bad those kids are. The kids these days, they don't stick to the church like we did. They're bad. And the same servant who said the really Islamic idiotic thing, very righteous. She's sitting there going, I told them what Jesus would do. And they left. They're bad. Right? Now the problem is who stays. the girl who goes, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to teach that in Sunday school because that's right. That's the Islamic God I worship. Right? That's the Islamic God my parents taught me about. So I'm going to worship that God. She stays. She continues the cycle. And so we have a lot of this happening in the church. Right? Forgive me. The monkeys stay and the smart people leave. And it perpetuates itself. The only way to break the cycle, I say things I shouldn't say. Allah, I don't want to get invited back. So what ends up happening is we leave because we don't like it. And I think the right thing to do is you stick it out and you just be. And I don't have to fix the church. I don't have to fix anybody. All I have to work on is myself. The way I look at service is we all get a plate in front of us. I don't care about your plate. I don't care what you're having. I don't care what you're eating. Did you finish your plate? That's not my business. My business is this plate. Right? So whoever God brings to me, I will serve with all my attention and all my love. And if I start looking around, I'm going to get real distracted, real depressed. If I start looking at the church, like the Coptic church and clergy and bishops, it's going to get depressed so fast you won't even know what hit you. Don't. Right? You say, whoever God brings to me, I'm going to give them 1,000% attention, and that's all I have, this plate right here. Any girl that comes to me, any boy that comes to me, I'm going to show them all the love I can. That's all I can do. Right? What happens, happens. Right? This is what I can do. I can get very discouraged. Oh, the priests aren't doing their job. The Sunday school teachers aren't doing their job. And we can do this all day. Everyone's not doing their job. Fine. Okay. Now what? Right? So, be the change you want to see in the world. That's it. Michael Jackson once said it. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him if he'll change his ways. No message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, look at yourself and make the change. So our role as parents isn't to focus exclusively on preventing sin. This is very important. But showing our kids that there's hope, forgiveness, and acceptance, and a path forward regardless. I'll tell you guys another story. Sorry, I have a lot of stories. Some Sunday school teacher in a church in LA gave a lesson to girls. She took a piece of paper, piece of copy paper, whatever, and she said, "This is you when you're a virgin." And then she crumbled it up, and she opened it back up, and she said, "This is you after you've lost your virginity, after you've repented. Even after you've repented, you're still never the same." What do you think of that horrible message? Because, the country we come from, right, on the wedding night, right, what do the Muslims do? They hold up a bed sheet, right? And they hold up the bed sheet and they say, "Look, my daughter was a virgin. I'm a good mom." Now, is she controlling? Is she manipulative? Is she evil? Does she love anybody? She's a virgin. That's all I care about. Okay? And they've reduced the whole thing to that one thing. Where's the hope? Where's the hope? Right? I'll tell you a true story. I told that story to Ambassador, our metropolitan in LA. I said, he was asking me what's wrong, and I said, "You want to hear a story? Let me tell you a story." So I told him that story. He got angry. And he said, "The church teaches that a harlot becomes a virgin after repentance." I said, "That's not what these girls heard." Right? So what happens when something happens? Where's the hope? Where's the path forward? It's gone. Well, and then there's a lot of youth that do as well. I'm already not a virgin, so might as well go crazy. That also happens a lot. Right? Because we've reduced it all to this thing. And so we're so busy doing 90% of our sins on don't, and only 10% on, well, there's hope afterwards, right? We need to focus on the hope. There's always a path forward. You can always come back to me. You can always come back to God. It's never closed. And the church is full of sinners and the icons, full of saints who are horrible people, condemned by everybody, and now are on icons in our church. Right? So that's not what we believe. Yet that's what we teach the kids a lot of times. So focused on preventing sin that we don't give a path to what happens afterwards. And that's why we lose hope. And sin becomes toxic, becomes shame. And then you walk into the church and you're like, what if people find out? What if people know what I did? What if the guy says something? What happens then? What happens if Buna finds out? What happens if my servant finds out? I already know what my servant thinks. She told me. She told me what she thinks of me. Right? So as Sunday school teachers, we have to be very careful the message we give. So focused on making sure everybody's pure that we've closed off the door. Right? Because we all mess up. That's okay. You're supposed to mess up, but you're supposed to get back up. That's repentance. Right? So how do I fix the shame? He has to cover me. How? I have to let him in. I have to open the door. And sometimes we just don't want to let him in. We're too ashamed of our sin to let him in. Into my body through the Eucharist leads to isolation, self-condemnation, and then it leads to condemnation and attacking others. And pain makes me lash out. Sometimes you find people attacking other people in the church, like Michael. And the immediate response is that person must be hurt. That person must be broken. Right? I can't believe he said this to me. I can't believe she said this to me. That's because they're in pain themselves. All right, should we get to the Q&A? All right, I'll end with this. What you do speaks so loud that I cannot hear what you say. Ralph Waldo Emerson. What you do speaks so loud. This is aimed at parents. Sorry, Dad, I can't hear you. Your actions are too loud. You can say whatever you want. Right? I'm watching you. I'm watching everything you do, how you react. And if you want to lie so you can save $15, you've taught me something. Does anybody have any questions, comments, criticisms, complaints? I was hoping not to get invited back. That's the goal.
You said at the beginning that you try to avoid kids pushing them to be like you. And at the end, all your examples were kids that are going to be like you.
Just because انت مش فاهم doesn't mean I didn't make up my mind. No, that's a good point. Yes. Oh, the question is, I said that in the beginning, sometimes as parents, we want the kids to be like us in our image and our likeness. Like, say, we like the Lakers and we want our kid to like the Lakers. مثلا. And then he said, but then in the end, I'm saying basically they end up like you. Right? So the first part, and you're right, I was unclear. The first part, I was talking about the ego. Right? So as a parent, it's very easy to let your ego get involved, right? To let you start comparing your kids with other kids. Which kid's better, right? Which kid isn't, right? And you start to, you don't want them to imitate you in a godly way. You want them to learn. Your motivation is fear of other people. Your motivation is your ego. Your motivation is your pride. And when that's your motivation, and your motivation isn't, I want my son or daughter to enter the kingdom of heaven, I want my son or daughter to have a relationship with Jesus. That's my goal, right? When my motivation isn't that, then I start to act out in a way that's suboptimal, right? And I start to make them like me. So this is a natural process, making them like me. But when me isn't fixed, then what I'm making them into is a monster. Right? So there are a lot of, like the girl I told you in the very beginning, right? She's like, well, you know, what are people going to say? She learned that from her parents. Her parents taught her to think about what other people are going to say, right? Because her parents didn't get past it. So she inherited it. And now she's making bad decisions. So my point is, if you don't want your kid to make that kind of decision, then you fix it first. Yes? Mama bear. Yeah. Okay. So I'll repeat the question, which is basically, you know, we're supposed to focus on our plate and just look at what's in front of us. But then when I hear some of the things that are said to my kids, some of the things that happen in church, some of the things that aren't Christian, then, you know, I kind of freak out, right? And then I kind of instinctually, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So an example I heard once that I really liked was, you know, someone said, look, if you sit at the piano and you start playing Beethoven, and someone isn't very good, right? And they're not playing Beethoven very well. People don't say, wow, Beethoven sucks, right? People say, you suck, right? He isn't doing a very good Beethoven. And so what's important for all of us is to have this, and kind of going back to how do I create this environment, is have this approach of, look, we're all playing Jesus, and none of us play Jesus very well, right? And sometimes it's hard for me to hear, like you'll hear a youth say, that's it, I'm done with church because I can't believe the priest did this or the servant did that, right? And my thinking is, who told you that servant or that priest is that good or that perfect, right? He's a person just like everybody else, right? So I think it's important to give our kids a balanced perspective always, right? Find the good, find the bad every time, right? And when we react strongly in either direction, when we say, you know, the clergy are God, problem. And when we say the clergy are garbage, problem. Right? So always have that balanced approach, right? And I can fix a lot of things, right? So, like what comes to mind as you're speaking is like all the stuff our kids are hearing in school about LGBTQ and all this stuff, right? And it's horrendous and all this, it's a mess, okay? I mean, some of it's, some of the stuff they're teaching kids that are 12, very explicit pornography, basically, gay pornography at 12 years old. It's mind-boggling. But as a parent, right, I go back to my earlier slide, right? That's the slide, right? So even when my kid comes to me and says, hey, we learned about whatever today in class, and I'm a 12-year-old, my reaction is very important at that moment. Excuse me. And when I learned something in Sunday school that was whatever, my reaction is very important at that moment, right? So that very calm approach, that's what they're going to remember, right? And not what you said. Right? I'll tell you a story. So Justin, when he was Justin, when he was in 8th grade, he comes up to me, he goes, I learned in biology about evolution, and so there's no God. How do we know there's a God? Because, there's evolution, and that's how the world got created. And so the Bible's wrong, and Genesis is wrong, it's all out the door. And this is 8th grade, right? And I was like, okay, that's just not the slide I wanted. Okay, whatever. Okay, can I put my slide now? And so he said that, and my heart dropped. Like, oh my God, my kid's questioning God. What do I do? 8th grade, already, school, biology, public schools. What did I do? And I had to just take a very deep breath, just very calmly go, oh, what did you learn? And he started talking about evolution. I go, yeah, evolution's great, full of great stuff. Survival of the fittest, natural selection, those all make a lot of sense. And I just very calmly talked him through it. Now, again, I'm not giving myself, what I'm telling you is my reaction was very important, right? Because if he'd seen me get defensive and say, no, that's because they're teaching you the wrong thing in the school and these Americans and they're teaching you the bad thing, and he's going to go, why are you so upset? Why are you reacting? I hit a nerve, didn't I? There's something to that, isn't there? There's truth in what they're saying. Scared. You're acting scared, right? And so my reaction as a parent has to always be calm. So when I see something in Sunday school, I can, again, I can just start painting on it, right? And say, oh, did the teacher say this? I think what they mean also is blah, blah, blah. And, I think what they're talking about is the love of Jesus and how God accepts all of us. And there goes the bad lesson right out the door. And they go, okay, right? So again, it's that communication, right? Constant. Hey, what'd you learn in Sunday school today? Oh, that's a great lesson. Did they talk about this? Oh, yeah, that's my favorite part of the story. I really like this part of the story, right? And we just touch it, right? Calmly, constantly, okay? Again, you're just gonna die frustrated, right? Otherwise, because there's always some Sunday school teacher saying something dumb. There's always some clergy saying something wrong. That's just life. No, I don't think so. And I think it's wrong to represent the church as that.
Not represent, but growing up in the church, unless they say otherwise, I assume that's a lot of people. And of course, it's age appropriate.
Yeah, there's the age appropriate, but I wouldn't say it's ripping away innocence, right? In fact, but it's making me, look, one of the best thing you can do as a parent is when you lose it, you go back to your kid and you say, Dad got upset. Dad shouldn't have done that. I really shouldn't have stormed out like that. That's wrong. And that really resonates with your child. They'll never forget it, right? So one of the things we do wrong as parents, as clergy, as servants, is we put ourselves on a pedestal and say, well, I'm going to talk in the royal we, and no, the more we can become human at their level, and there's nothing to rip away, right? Because think about Jesus, right? Jesus is not a man, but he pretended to be one, right? So he came down to our level. That's a very big, big, big thing, right? He came down to our level and just blended. He even came as a homeless guy, right? So very, very, like, just you know, he didn't set himself out. In fact, people didn't know who he was, right? So this whole idea of setting myself apart and saying, well, I'm not like other people, that's not okay. That's not Christianity, because that's not what Jesus did, right? So even as a clergy member, I shouldn't set myself apart and say, I'm not like you, I'm clergy. No, because Jesus didn't do that, right? Because I am just a guy like you wearing this thing, right? And Christ, who wasn't like you, blended, right? So I don't think having this facade of holiness and, no, I don't think that's, I say, look, this is a place of broken people. This is a hospital. You say, do you know that tante, uncle did blah, 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 and this? Yeah, of course. We all fall. We all break. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this person did this. Yeah, you know what I do? There it is. I just de-escalated it. But instead, when I hear that uncle or tante did something, or this person said this, I can't believe they did that. You know, that's wrong. They shouldn't have done that. You know, this is, you know, the best thing to do when your kid says that, you go, yeah, you know, maybe that wasn't the right thing, but I mess up too. Boom. I just flattened the whole thing. I de-escalated the whole thing. Everything's calm, and it's theologically correct, because I am broken just like that person. Keep it simple. Yes? One?
Wait, yeah.
تفضلي.
Okay, so 3 questions. So earlier you said about raising kids to be like us, and where the ego comes and the comparison and stuff like that. How can I identify what's broken, what's wrong? Because we all think that we turned up okay, you know, so we're just repeating we repeat whatever our parents did to us and say, oh, but I turned out okay, so I have to make sure that my kids is doing the same. How can we identify as human beings that actually I am not okay, that this is wrong?
The first thing I'll say, and I think this is kind of my theory as to what's happening in the Coptic Church a little bit, is because we want to keep this aura of righteousness, right? And we have to pretend like, you know, I don't want to be a stumbling block to other people. I have to be holy. I think what we're doing is we reduce what holiness is. We make it simple, right? So I lower the bar, right? I say, I fast Wednesdays and Fridays. I come to liturgy early. I do this thing, right? And now that makes me a good person, okay? So I think what we're doing is we reduce righteousness and holiness and make it easier on ourselves. What was your question again? Sorry.
How can a parent identify what's actually wrong with them?
So what happens is when you set your vision not on the easy things, right? Not on, did I eat ful and tameya for 55 days? I didn't break it one time. Yeah. Big deal. Who cares, right? But if that's my goal, then I will feel that righteousness that you have. But now I say, okay, you know what? For these 55 days, why don't you try forgiving that one person that screwed you over last year or 5 years ago? And you're like, never. Tell you what, 55 days, try to forgive them. That's work, right? Now, I've set the bar to something real instead of the low bar, right? And that's the way I don't feel. I mean, let me put it to you this way. If you feel like you're satisfied with your spiritual life, something is very wrong.
Absolutely.
Right? You should never feel that way. You should never feel like I'm killing it. That's, you know. Huh?
Nailed it.
No, I mean really, like that's a horror, that's, yeah.
Okay. Second question.
طبعا, Georgia. And I mean, archdeacons, طبعا, up here.
Oh, yeah. So I have 2 other questions. The other one is more on the practical social. How involved should we be with our kids' friendships? Like, you know, I have Anthony and I have Alex. Alex is on the younger side. I see questionable friends, right, from school or whatever. I chose to sit down and be silent and watch them burn in flames, literally. And
I want to hear about this literally.
I will tell you the story. But I'm just like, if I go and say, do not talk to this kid, or this is bad influence or whatever, then I'm doing a little bit too much, and he's probably going to do it behind my back.
Yeah.
And this
So-
praying and speaking does not work really. Just like, it's just-
Well, then let's just stop doing that praying thing.
no, don't pray, but
I'm
speak
kidding.
less is very
I'm-
hard.
Yeah. Speak, then pray. Actually, you pray once the speaking doesn't work. It's usually, it works the other way around. Like
That too.
I've spoken 11 times. I think I'll try prayer. You know, again, my approach has always been less is more, right? It's kind of like, you know, I don't want my kid to catch a cold, okay? How do I prevent them from getting sick? Well, there's two ways to do it. I can keep them isolated, right? Wear a mask, don't go there, don't wash your hands, blah, blah. Or I can say, you know what, you should get a lot of sleep, and you should get vitamin C, and you should eat healthy, and you should exercise, right? And if you do those things, you'll generally be healthy.
Yeah.
And yeah, you may get a virus here or there, because there are viruses out there. And you'll catch something, but you'll get over it. You'll move on. Because I've given them healthy things. I've given them coping, I've given them hope, right? Because your kids are going to mess up. That's what kids do, right? And so if I've given them an outlet of hope, right, then when they mess up, they know they're going to come to me, they know they're going to come to Christ, and it's going to be okay, right? And that is a much better than don't talk, blah, 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 because then what happens is, like you said, they're just going to go behind your back, right? I'll tell you a story with Anna. One time, Anna, she was in junior high, and she pissed me off. So I took her phone,
Shocking.
right? I said, give me your phone, right? Which is, I used to do it to her all the time. And then her phone was sitting on my desk, and back then when a message came up, you could read the message. It wasn't the face recognition things, a couple years ago. So her phone came up, and like, I'm talking 3 minutes after I took her phone. Phone came up, and it said, look, I know your phone got taken away, let's switch to blah, 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 Google Chat or something, whatever, right? So immediately she had bypassed whatever it is I had done, right? And that's when I just walked out, handed her phone back, it's not gonna work, forget it, right? So that's just not gonna work, right? So you cutting them off constantly, right? And then sometimes, we get in this, we take some of the Old Testament verses, right, and we say, my people should not be associated with those people and our purity and blah, blah, blah. And then we interpret them the way the Pharisees did, which is, I am to exclude myself. If someone who is a Gentile passes by me, I can't pass this direction, I'm not supposed to interact. And that's not how Jesus interacted, right? Now, obviously, they're kids, right, and they're impressionable, and I should do everything I can to show them the right path. And if I see something blatant, I should stop it for sure. But again, as much as you can, work with the relationship, right? Because here's what happens. You do all this stuff, right? You manage the friendships, and you check the moms, and you make sure the family is good, and you make sure the mishadif is the whatever, right? And do all this stuff. And then they go to college, INSEE, right? So they're going to go to college, you're going to interact with everything known to man under the sun all at once. World's open, right? And now they're like, wow, this is amazing. Look at all the stuff my parents don't even know about. As I tell you, your son just graduated high school, right? So, no pressure, right? So that's what happens, right? So what I want to do is I want to build from the inside, right? Make them healthy, keep them strong, give them hope, give them options, let them know what's right and wrong, and then they're going to go out and they're going to make their mistakes. That's okay, right? But as long as they know you're there. Now, obviously, if you get some kid who's like, hey, let's go do meth in the back, let's not go there, right? So, don't be silly.
My last question
Yes.
is, when they mess up, and we know that they're going to mess up, how can you overcome the feeling that, okay, I love you, I know that God forgave you, but I can't? Yeah.
She said, God forgave you, but I won't. I
Yes.
can't. All right.
And it burns, because you feel like you know that he's forgiven, you know that he's loved, and you know that you love him unconditionally, but this just changed your view of your kid forever. You can always see him from that angle, and you cannot just like shake yourself out of it.
I mean, my advice for that problem, I would say, and again, I'm just gonna go after you, is that comes from a place of righteousness, right? So if I see myself as what I am, actually what I am, I can't have that thought about my kid or anybody else. Right? I mean, when you see yourself as just broken, how do you judge anybody? I mean, you know, like you could tell me that person did whatever, like, yeah, whatever. You know what I do?
Is it that because you're just so disappointed? You just love them so much.
You don't love them so much. It's your ego.
Oh, so it's not disappointment.
It is. It's disappointment in them because they let you down after everything I've done. Is this how I raised you? Is this what I taught you? Does this reflect on me? That's your ego. I mean, look, you know, this is why Satan fell, right? All the sins are the same sin. There's only one sin. It's ego. It's pride. And everything comes back to that. Because that's the original sin. Nimtu? Hope. All right. Don't suck. Haga positive. Bariv. Okay, I'll build. Here you go. Speak more to God about your children than to your children about God. The soul of the teenager is in a state of an explosion of freedom. For this reason, he has a hard time accepting various counsels. So rather than counseling him continuously and reproaching him now and again, leave the situation to Christ, to the saints, asking them to bring him to reason. Again, calm approach, right? Speak more to God than you do to your kids. We nag our kids over and over again, and they just ignore us. And that's where we're at, right? You all know you're ignored. Right? I mean, Anna never ignores me. Actually, she doesn't even know I'm there. I'll be like, did you hear what I said? All right, so this is key, right? I think control is a figment of your imagination, right? As parents, you've all figured this out, right? You have no control. It's over. Right? And it's like God rips control out of your hands as you're clutching on to your kid, right? And the guy's like, no, that's not going to happen, right? This is coming right out of your, right? Oh, there's hope. Okay. Escutinti. All right, hope is be good. Okay, so, yeah. Okay, so I'll tell you an example that I always think of is if you want to hold water, right? The way you hold the most amount of water is as loosely as possible, right? You hold it like this, right? And the more you grip, the less water you have, right? And so I always think of this as the hearts of our kids. Right? You want to hold on to the hearts of your kids, hold them loosely, gently, right? If they want to come back, they have to want to come back to you. They have to want to be around you. They have to want to hear your words, right? And the looser you hold, the more you hold. The tighter you hold, the less you have. And then they don't want anything to do with you, right? And in this society, in Egypt, like it's so culturally wrong to ignore your parents that no one does, right? No matter what your parents did, no matter how much they beat you, you have to go back to mama, right? لازم العيد, لازم. In America, that's not the case. It is culturally acceptable to say, my parents did a bad job, I've cut them off. That is a normal thing. In fact, that's what friends say to each other. Yeah, I don't talk to my dad anymore. I don't talk to my mom anymore. I don't talk to my sister anymore. Right? That's normal. In Egypt, no one says, I don't talk to my sister anymore. Right? I mean, everyone's like, or my mom. Like, that's Zay. So we have to take a different approach here. Right? We can't do I'm your mom, no matter what you're going to... No, I don't have to. I don't have to. Alhamdulillah. All right. Anybody want any hope? I don't think I have a hope slide. Yes? You want to eat? Okay. Should we go eat? It's almost 9 o'clock. Anyone else have any questions that want to prevent us from eating?
Can I just...
Oh, yeah, George has something to say.
So, ناخد quick vote كده. Long time ago, we had a couples meeting. Mark actually did the couples meeting when he was here. And we're thinking of bringing it back. It's going to be... starting with focus on couples and marriage, and then the 6 sessions. There's like a curriculum that we're going to follow, and then another 6 sessions about parenting. If you guys are going to be interested, it's going to be once a month, a Friday probably, and we will have kids care or something happening downstairs for the youth. Usually there's Fridays that the youth, the high schoolers have something event, and we'll extend that to other kids. So couples, all couples, any couples, yeah. Who's facilitating this? Magda will be, just a new news for her. We'll have speakers that will take different topics. Probably people more professional than Mark, like somebody who actually studied psychology and people and know how to talk to them. So she's going to be one of those. We have Nardine, a saint over there. I'm putting people on the spot here, so yeah. We'll have speakers from the church and from outside the church. Vote. Is this something you guys want? Wala balash. Una already blessed it, and he said yes.
Let's start after summer. So I think a lot of people are traveling over the summer, and there's like a lot of things have the goal of starting in September.
September. Okay. Yes, September, once a month. Will you guys show up? Type. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. And God bless you and God bless all your families. And make a thirst to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us daily bread, Jesus Christ, bless us. Yes, into temptation, Christ is our Lord and Christ. Go in peace, peace with you all. Go downstairs.
Topic